All right, guys, we're going to break down a huge game this week. The 11th ranked team in the country, the Kentucky Wildcats, are coming into Sanford Stadium to play the number one team in the country, the Georgia Bulldogs. This game has huge implications on it because both of these teams are in the SEC East. They're both undefeated. I think this is the first time two SEC East teams have been 6-0. Both teams playing each other. So it's a historical game in that aspect of it, but it's also just has huge implications, right? Kentucky's on track for having one of the best seasons in the history of Kentucky football, and if they beat Georgia, they are going to be the front runner in the East, and probably they're going to be playing in the SEC championship game against one of the SEC West teams. That's kind of debatable now because Alabama lost to Texas A&M, but Kentucky is having a great season, and this game matters a lot to Kentucky. It matters a lot to Georgia. Georgia's on track to play in the SEC championship game, probably make it to the playoffs, and maybe play in the national championship game. The defense is definitely playing at a national championship caliber, level, what you want to call it. The offense is not completely healthy. They're probably going to get there pretty soon, but both teams are playing really well. Both teams have a lot to play for, and the loser or winner of this game, depending on how it goes, is going to impact the trajectory of both of these teams, right? Georgia, if they lose to Kentucky, their chances of making it to the playoffs and making it to national championship is a lot less than what it would be if they win. If Kentucky loses, their chances of doing things that would make it a more magical season than it already is, their chances of doing that go down too. I mean, they're playing probably not for a playoff spot, I wouldn't say, but they're playing for a huge bowl game, and I was just thinking, I mean, maybe they are playing for a playoff spot. If they beat Georgia and they run the table and go undefeated, and then they're undefeated when they go into that SEC championship game and they lose a close one to like Alabama, they're probably going to get in. Honestly, that's probably hard to believe and hard for me to say honestly as myself, but it is a possibility, right? And Kentucky, they as weird as it is to say, they could run the table and make it to the playoffs, right? So both teams have a lot to play for. I'm going to cover a bunch of different things that could impact this game. I want to start with talking about this is the first week that Georgia is ranked number one in a long time, right? They is I don't think that this Georgia team is going to struggle with that, having that label on them, that target on their back. Georgia always has a target on their back, right? I don't think Georgia plays like that though. They play with the mindset that the opponent that they're playing against, they're the ones with the target on their back, and they're going to go out there and punch you in the mouth and finish the game by halftime, right? They're not going to sit there and get wrapped around all of the social media stuff about being the number one team in the country. Sure, the players are going to notice it. Sure, the players are going to see it. You can't really stop that. But I don't think Kirby Smart's going to let this team get wrapped around that stuff. I promise you he's going to make sure that they don't get, as Coach Saban says, the rat poison. I'm sure they're not going to let the rat poison get to their brains and impact the way they're playing because they don't play like that, right? They play Georgia football no matter who they're playing, no matter what they're ranked. They play Georgia football week in and week out. But still, it will be interesting to see if, there is a little bit of a drop-off. They did come off a very physical game against Auburn and a physical game against Arkansas. And Kentucky, Kirby Smart says it's one of their most physical games every single year. So it will be interesting to see how the team handles it. The team's banged up, right? I think Kentucky's a little banged up too, but this team is banged up. They already have injuries before this three stretch of games that we're about to finish after we play Kentucky. They've already been banged up in preseason. Now they're more banged up, right? Jamari Sawyer went down last week. Chris Smith went down last week with a shoulder injury. A lot of starting guys are starting to get hurt more and more, and that can impact how the team plays. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the team handles that this week. So I want to cover every week when I do a preview and prediction video, I kind of give my three keys to the game, three things that I think could impact how the game plays out. And the first one is home field advantage, right? It seems like home field advantage matters more this year than it ever has. Teams last year didn't get to play in road atmospheres that were full capacity because COVID. Stadiums were half full. People did. I covered on this last week too, the Auburn game, because the Auburn game was Georgia's first, real road test for themselves. But this is going to be Kentucky's first real road game since COVID. Kentucky has played six games this year. 5 of them have been at home, right? and they barely beat teams like Chattanooga at home, okay? They've struggled to grind out. Now, I'm not taking away from Kentucky, but I'm saying even at home, they've struggled to win some games. They went to South Carolina. They beat South Carolina on the road. That's their only road game. Coming into Athens is a hard place to play, right? Sanford Stadium is one of the toughest places in college football to play, especially in recent years. I've heard some people say Sanford Stadium wasn't so much of a really intimidating atmosphere maybe like 20 years ago, but it has become that, right? It's last week the decibels, I think it was 110 decibels, which was higher than the whiteout game at nighttime for Penn State, and our game was at noon, right? Sorry, not last week. It was against Arkansas, but it gets really loud in Sanford Stadium. So for this to be Kentucky's first real road game, it's going to be hard for Kentucky to handle that in general, let alone this game being so, I don't know, monumental, catastrophic. I don't know how you want to say it. I mean, the whole college football playoff picture could be mixed up depending on how this game goes. Okay, if Kentucky beats Georgia, I mean, that's it. That's the final thing that could go wrong this year. I mean, everything is just like hectic this year. I mean, teams are losing. Top 10 teams are losing left and right in the AP poll. Alabama lost last week to a two-loss unranked Texas A&M team. Right? Things are just crazy. If Kentucky beats Georgia, everything is just going to be. It's going to be hard for the committee to kind of figure out at the end of the year who the four best teams are. But, I mean, this is going to be a crazy atmosphere. College game day's here. SEC Nation is here. Recruits are coming in to watch this game. Lots of recruits are coming. It's going to be at 3:30 on CBS. It's going to be the biggest game of the week, too. One of the biggest games in the SEC for this season. I mean, it can't get any bigger than this, really, for these two teams when they play each other, because usually when these two teams play, it's not that big of a game. This is about as big as it can get for both of these teams, and I think Georgia's going to be able to handle it. We've already seen Georgia handle big-time scenarios this year. Arkansas, road test at Auburn, Clemson. Even though Clemson isn't looking great, that was still a tough first game of the year, and with all the national media focusing on that game all offseason, for Georgia to come in there and stay composed, which is one of the key fundamental words that Kirby keeps talking about this year, composure. For the team to stay composed like that says a lot about the team. It's a very mature team, very confident team. They don't really let a lot of things rattle them, but we haven't really seen that from Kentucky. They played in some close games, Kentucky, but not on the road. The Florida game was a close game, but it was at home. So, the first key is going to be home field advantage. I think that's really going to help Georgia out in this game. Second one, the game plan is the same this week as it was last week. Stop Kentucky's run, just like we needed to stop Auburn's run. I said last week if we stop Auburn's run, then I don't think it's going to be close at all, and it wasn't. Auburn could barely run the ball, which made it harder for Bo Nix to make plays. And, the game was pretty much over by halftime. It was like they had a good drive there. Auburn did at the beginning of the game, and I think they had a couple more, pretty good drives where they kind of moved down the field and kind of pushed the defense around just a little bit. But nothing crazy. Georgia was able to shut down the run really easy. And I think, Kentucky's a good running team. They come into the country ranked 23rd in rushing offense, averaging 214 yards per game. They want to kind of just establish the line of scrimmage and run you down. But it's going to be hard to do that against Georgia. This defensive line is one of the best college football has probably ever seen. Jordan Davis is actually getting talks for the Heisman right now, like serious talks. Like people on ESPN and a lot of big time networks have been talking about Jordan Davis possibly being a Heisman candidate. This defense is just that good. We have defensive players being talked for the Heisman. I mean, it's going to be hard for Kentucky to run. And Georgia is ranked, let's see here, 4th in the country, only allowing 64.2 yards per game. They're only allowing opponents to get half of their rushing yards, pretty much. If you go look back at the statistics between the averages of teams that we played coming into the game and what they were able to produce in the game, Georgia only allows them to do half of their average. So if Kentucky's only averaging 214 yards per game, they're probably only going to get 100, if even that. I mean, we're only allowing 64.2 yards a game. It's going to be hard for them to run the ball, but if they can, the game's going to be close, right? But if they can't, it's going to be a lot harder, which kind of leaves me into my third key of the game, special teams and secondary. If they can't run the ball, their only chance is going to be to throw deep balls, 50-50 balls down the field, and special teams. Special teams turnovers, special teams plays, blocked punts, blocked kicks. They're going to have to make plays, Kentucky, in special teams and produce turnovers on defense. They're going to have to do more of those, uncertain variables in games that you have sometimes in college football that kind of impact. Like the South Carolina game in 2019 with Georgia, I think it was like 3 or 4 turnovers that Georgia had, which helped South Carolina out so much. If we didn't have those, Georgia would have beat South Carolina. So sometimes in games like this, turnovers really matter a lot. But if Georgia takes away the run game, they're going to have to throw it down the field. Now, they have a great wide receiver in Wan'Dale Robinson. He's an elite pass catcher. And our secondary is young. We're banged up. Tyke Smith, he's been hurt. We've not really even. I think he played a couple snaps last week, from what I heard. I didn't notice him on the field, but we haven't really seen him do a lot. We know he's a talented guy, but we don't know how he's going to play in this defense. Darion Kendrick, he's played well. Keely Ringo's played well. Amir Speed is hurt. He's not even available to go, I don't think, this week, from what I heard Kirby Smart talking about. So the secondary is young, right? We have Brini back there too, who's playing really well. But the secondary hasn't really been challenged that much this year. And it's young, it's inexperienced in some aspects on some side of the fields, Keely Ringo. So I think that's their only chance is going to be to throw some deep balls. If they even have the time to do that. The defensive line is not even really allowed teams to be able to do it. I think I saw that Kentucky had like 20-something QB hurries this year, or like QB pressures or something like that. I think Georgia has 109. So that lets you know right there, Georgia's defense is just on a completely different level. Like, Georgia's just not going to let the quarterback have a lot of time to move it down the field. And if the quarterback does have time, our coverage has been well too. That's going to be really hard for them to like squeeze balls into tight coverages. They're going to have to do 50-50 balls down the field and maybe like force, Keely Ringo to give up a pass interference, move the ball, move the chains 15 yards and stuff like that. They're going to have to do those type of things to really challenge this team and kind of force it if they can't run the ball. Now, again, if they can run the ball, this game's going to be a lot closer than I think Georgia fans are going to be comfortable with, but I don't see that happening. It's really going to be hard to rush the ball on this team. But yeah, I mean, this game's going to be a good game regardless. It's going to be, I don't think JT Daniels is going to be playing this week. I think Stetson Bennett is going to be playing. A lot of people are trying to stir up like a QB controversy. There's not a QB controversy, I don't think. Now, Stetson Bennett, I've always been a fan of Stetson Bennett, but I don't think that the offense is as elite with Stetson Bennett as it is with JT Daniels, just based on what we've seen production-wise. But it is very, very good. I just don't know if we can beat a team like Alabama or Oklahoma, who now has Caleb Williams, who is playing really well. If you watch that Texas game, he came in there and came in off the bench for Spencer Rattler and played exceptionally well. Ohio State starting to get a really good offense. When you start playing teams that have really, really good offenses and it starts to challenge our defense a little bit, and then, they're starting to score. When you play teams that have elite offenses, they're going to score on you, okay? I don't care how good our defense is. They won't score as much, now I'll tell you that, but our defense is not going to be able to hold teams like Oklahoma out of the end zone, right? It's just not going to happen. So you're going to need your offense to be playing elite. Our offense is banged up, right? We don't even have half the guys that would be playing. George Pickens, Dominic Blaylock, Karis Jackson is playing a limited role. Rosemy-Jacksaint. We just got Darnell Washington back. JT Daniels isn't playing. Jamari Sawyer kind of has a twisted ankle. He may not play. We have all of these. Arian Smith. He's not. Jermaine Burton didn't play last week. Kenny McIntosh was hurt last week. I mean, these are star players that we were expecting to have great years that have barely even played. And look what we're doing to teams. We're still obliterating them with our freshman players called Ladd McConkey that we didn't even know existed before the season started. Freshman Brock Bowers. A.D. Mitchell. These guys are coming out of nowhere and still putting up the same production, if not better production, than we saw last year. So I don't know. This team is scary good. Okay, I kind of lost where I was going with that, but this team is scary good. And once we get these guys back, our offense is going to be scary. It's going to be elite. It's going to be hard to stop. It's going to be hard to beat us. Honestly, it's hard to beat us now. Our defense is just that good. It's hard to score points. Like the offense doesn't really have to do that much, anyways. But when we get all these guys back, our offense is going to go from here to here, and it's going to finally start playing at the same level as our defense, and teams are going to have a really hard time beating us. And I think we're going to have a lot of these guys back for the Florida game. But yeah, that's kind of like that's my preview for Kentucky, Georgia. Just kind of some things I was thinking about, some keys to the game. It's going to be a fun one to watch. I think there's some other good games this week. Florida plays LSU. That'll be interesting to see how the Gators handle that game. Yeah, Alabama plays Mississippi State at Mississippi State. Still, even though they lost to Tech Stadium last year, last week, I don't think Alabama's going to struggle too much with Mississippi State. I think Nick Saban's going to have the team ready to go after a loss like that. So I kind of feel bad for Mississippi State this week. But, yeah, I mean, not too many crazy big games this week, but some fun games to watch probably. But this Georgia-Kentucky game is at 3:30 on CBS. It'll be a fun one to watch. But make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. It'd mean a lot to me. Make sure you comment down below what your predictions are for the game. My score prediction, I think I have Georgia winning 34 to maybe 13. I do think they score a touchdown, maybe two. I don't know. I do think Georgia scores in the 30s. I don't know if they cover the spread. I think the spread's 22.5 points last time I checked, maybe, which is pretty high spread considering both teams are undefeated. Kentucky's ranked 11th. Alabama's only a 17-point favorite over unranked Mississippi State team, and Georgia's 22.5 over number 11 Kentucky. If that tells you what you want to know right there. The spread's pretty high. I don't know if they cover it, but I think it is pretty accurate. I do think Georgia gets close to covering the spread. I have them 34 to 13. So, yeah, that's my score prediction. But make sure you comment down below your score predictions or anything else you want to talk about in the game. Make sure you subscribe, hit the bell. Yeah, thanks for watching. Really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.